Hello? Okay. Okay, welcome back, everyone. Is this working? Okay. Yeah, it should be working. Okay, so welcome back. So we are going to be doing some more of the Lost Girl visual novel today. And it is about 5 o'clock, which I want to start making that. I think that that's a good time for me. I want to start making that my my scheduled streaming time. So I do need to set everything up so that it's officially scheduled. And then once it gets scheduled, then I'll start to try and be here at 5 every day if I can. Well, yeah, I'll try and make that. I'll try to be here at 5 every day if I can to do at least an hour recording, if nothing more. But I want to shoot for 2 hours. At least 2 hours at least every other day. That's my goal. But you know if I want to do whatever. Anyway, but at 5 o'clock I want to start scheduling that for my regular time. So today we will continue with Lost Girl. Let's go ahead and let's just go ahead and continue and begin. Serena sat at her desk, cupping her cheek with one hand and the other aimlessly marking her notebook with childlike doodles. Butterflies, some birds, grass, a sun, a tree. She was tapping her foot as she always did when she was impatient. Her eyes drifted to her watch on her drawing wrist every 5 minutes, hoping it would magically manage to speed up. Do you have something you'd like to show the class? At the sound of her name, Serena's eyes jolted to the front. Her body went stiff and she began to shake nervously. Pardon? Those doodles you're working on, while you completely ignore my lecture. Surely you'd like to show them to the entire class. Serena blushed, gripping her notebook tightly and holding it against her chest to hide it from view. She'd be embarrassed even if her family saw these drawings. Though she knew her mother was the type to hang even her worst artworks on the fridge if they belonged in a museum. As if they belonged in a museum. No, sir. Well then, I'd ask that you pay attention and take notes instead of drawing. And a bit of advice, if you plan on ignoring the lecture to draw, then make attempts to look towards the front periodically. And not check your watch every 5 minutes. Makes you much less suspicious. Yes, sir. Serena did her best to hide herself by sinking as far as she could into her seat. But she could feel everyone's eyes on her. She could hear their snickers, their whispers. She wanted to be 100 miles away rather than be the center of attention. Three girls in the back of the class, the same girls who always chatted amongst themselves, but never got in trouble for it, began to gossip as they always did. And the teacher continued on with his lecture as if nothing at all was happening. What, does she have a date or something? That's gotta be one special guy for her to be so flustered. Even though she just got called out in class, she might actually be luckier than us. Hey, I can totally get a date. Yeah, right. The last guy you asked out ran away in terror. Hey, that's so not true. He was just late. Mm-hmm, sure he was. Oh, you two are hopeless. Speak for yourself. Maybe we can take some pointers from her. If she'll even talk to us. Yeah, true. She never talks to anyone. How'd she even manage to score a date anyway? All of a sudden, at being the subject of all the ridicule and tension, something inside Serena snapped. It had been a long time since she had been this anxious, this panicked. But she couldn't take being stared at like she was an alien, laughed at, talked about right behind her back. It's not a date! She erupted as she stood from her desk, still hugging her notebook to her chest. Suddenly the room got deathly quiet. The teacher stopped lecturing in mid-sentence. The class stopped scribbling down notes, and even the girls behind her had stopped gossiping. Everyone's eyes were on her again. In her rage, she had completely forgotten herself. And that she was in the middle of class, surrounded by about 30 other students just like her. All of which were now just simply staring at her in confusion and shock. Her heart pounded in her chest, her breath hitched in her throat. I'm sorry. Without being able to be the center of attention any longer, Serena quickly grabbed her things and bolted out of the classroom door. She didn't dare look back to see everyone's looks of disappointment. A tear ran down her cheek when she thought about how disappointed her parents would be. How much punishment would she get from the teacher for this? Would she be kicked out of class? Fail? She ran, not wanting to think about it anymore. She ran to the meeting place, a small convenience store around the corner from Labyrinth. Everyone in this area knew well and visited frequently. She knew full well that she was an hour early. But she didn't want to be anywhere else or see anyone else. She wanted to be with the one person she knew wouldn't make fun of her. The one person who wouldn't judge. The person who, as she opened her eyes wide, was right in front of her now. Serena? I didn't expect you for at least another 30 minutes. Are you okay? She never was good at hiding her tears, or hiding anything really. Her mother always said that she wore her emotions on her sleeve, and one look at her face was enough to know everything that she was feeling. Serena frantically reached up her sleeve and began to attempt to wipe them away. What was left over, she was sure, was a red splotched wet mess. But it wasn't as if she could fake it now. Sorry, I thought I'd have some time to calm down, but... Yeah, I showed up early. Sorry, I just had a strong urge to see you, and... The bunny girl's heart skipped a beat. Layla wanted to see her as much as she wanted to see Layla. So much so that she showed up early to wait in hopes of even getting to spend a few extra minutes of time with her. Her cheeks flushed, though she doubted Layla would notice over the red remains of her tears. That's probably weird, right? Or stalkerish even? I mean, we barely know each other after all. God, I must sound completely stupid. No, I think it's nice. I wanted to see you too. Despite the fact that she was just crying barely 5 minutes ago, Serena found herself smiling softly at the other. Thinking that someone else wanted to see her, was waiting for her, it was a feeling that Serena couldn't describe. But she knew at least that it made her happy. Good. But if you don't want to go out now, I totally understand. We can go somewhere else and talk. No. Serena blurted out, a bit stronger than she had intended. She was so used to being coddled, to not being taken seriously. She wanted to make her intentions clear. She didn't want there to be any misunderstandings. I want to go with you. And I don't want any of my negative feelings getting in the way of whatever fun we'll have. So, let's go. On one condition. Name it. Layla narrowed her eyes and began to study the other's face, as if she was searching for expressions to cue her in on a particular detail Serena was unaware of. Serena shook a bit self-consciously. That you don't run away from your feelings. You don't have to tell me what happened, or even what you're feeling right now. But I won't let this adventure be an excuse for you to run away from your problems. Okay? I promise I won't run. At least, not anymore today. The fox smiled, gesturing a hand toward the street across from her. Well then, princess. Off we go to our first adventure. Right. Serena giggled, and they began to walk side by side down the afternoon suburban streets, wondering just what sorts of things they would see when they reached the destination. Hurry up, or we'll miss the penguin show. Penguins? They have penguins at Everton? Layla laughed, grabbing the other by the hand and rushing her inside. Just moments ago they had eagerly handed the attendant some cash, which Layla had generously offered, and the attendant bowed his head in thanks as they practically ran inside. Serena really didn't have much time to look as Layla rushed her along. But she held on for dear life in hopes that Layla wasn't joking. That there was going to be real life, actual penguins here. Ones that she had only seen in animal books or browsed on Google Images. She smiled brightly as she turned her head from side to side, watching in wonder as water and rainbow creatures flowed all around her, just one glass pane away. Oh, thank God. They're just about to start right now. And suddenly they were stopped. By the time they had gotten there, the indoor benches outside the penguin habitat were already filled with people. Mostly parents and children, who were just laughing and playing a bit too loud, and showing each other keychains and plushes their parents had bought them at the gift shop. Layla frowned, looking a bit disappointed at not being able to get a front row seat. We can just watch from back here. It's quieter and I can still see fine. She assured Layla, who just shrugged in response. The frown drifted from the fox girl's face, and a look of sheer excitement replaced it as she watched a female aquarist step out into the land portion of the habitat on the other side of the glass. The aquarist spoke into the microphone wrapped around her ear, and the show began. It was only then that Layla realized that she still had Serena's hand within her own. When she attempted to lean backwards against a concrete pillar to rest her back on, and felt Serena's arm tug against the small force. Sorry, I guess I grabbed it without your permission. The fox girl released the other's hand quickly, holding her hands up in the air as if to prove her innocence. Layla's cheeks were red, but she tried to drift her attention to the penguin show so as not to draw attention to them. Serena found that her own cheeks had heated up a bit when she realized that she had held the other's hand, even if it was for just a few moments. She'd never even been that close to a friend before, and it made her feel warm and wanted. It's okay. I'll let you know if you do anything that I don't like. Promise? Layla gave the other a grin, but deep in her eyes was the look of sincerity that proved to the bunny girl that she was being deadly serious. Serena gave the other a smile and nodded her head. Promise. And so for the next hour or so, they watched the lady feed equatorial penguins raw fish and give out random facts about them that Layla thought were surprisingly informative. Serena watched in amazement as the penguins effortlessly glided through the water and waded along the shore, to which she giggled like a child over a puppy. When the show was over, Layla had to pull Serena out of her penguin-struck trance. She dragged her by the arm for a few moments before they retraced their steps to the entrance, and they began to actually explore the aquarium as intended, one tank at a time. I hope we get to see some sea turtles. And that's what you want to see? Not jellyfish or clownfish? Or, well, any kind of fish? Serena giggled as she walked beside her, peeking her head over a tank of a few stingrays. She debated for a moment whether she was going to roll up her sleeves and pet one, but then she inched backward just when it looked like she was about to begin to commit. These are all great too, but I guess I always just felt connected to turtles. Hiding in their shells and all that. I like to be on my own too, to swim freely in my own thoughts. Layla rolled up her sleeve without a second thought, gliding her hand over the top of a stingray. Serena opened her eyes wide at the other, surprised that she could commit to petting one just so easily. Surely, sometimes coming out of your shell, the feeling the touch of something new, isn't so bad once in a while, right? At that, Serena glided as close as she could to Layla. She held out her arm and stuck her shaky fingers under the water. She reached her hand down, closer and closer to the stingray, who seemed to be attached to Layla's touch. She jumped a bit as soon as her fingertips danced over the stingray's back, beginning to retreat her hand out of the water. But Layla just gently grabbed her wrist and moved her hand back into the place under the water surface. The stingray danced along the edges of her fingers, down her palm, and swam off towards a small group of children on the other side of the tank. See, that wasn't so bad, right? Serena pulled her hand out of the tank, which was now dripping. She stared at her hand for a moment, as if the touch of the stingray was still stitched into her skin. Then she smiled, first to herself, and then up at Layla, who was patiently awaiting her response. It was a little slimy, but not bad at all. There's tons more to see. If you're brave enough, of course. I think I can. If you're with me. What she said was so sincere and innocent that Layla couldn't help but blush at it. She chuckled a bit to herself as she reached the hand washing station. Nodding Serena over and gesturing for her to clean up her own hands thoroughly. When Serena finished drying her hands, Layla had already plotted their next destination. and began to lead the other there. Ah, the grand finale. Amazing. The glass must be super strong to be able to hold all this water. All these reefs and all these... For a brief moment, Serena's face went blank. Like she was just looking at something she couldn't believe. Then her mouth twitched into a bright smile, and she jumped up and down like a child, pointing just over her head. Layla followed her fingertips, seeing that above them in the tunnel of see-through glass, they were currently walking through... Layla followed her fingertips, seeing that above them in the tunnel of see-through glass they were currently walking through. A sea turtle nearly the size of their own selves was drifting by. A few sharks and other marine life also fluttered above the canopy of the sea. But Serena's attention never drifted from this turtle's dark wood shell, as it drifted gracefully around the aquarium sea. You really like turtles, don't you? He's so pretty. Like a prince of the ocean. What if it's a she? Then a princess of the sea. What if it's older? Then a queen. The fox girl began to laugh, which Serena echoed. Laughing, they both knew now was really contagious. At least when the two of them were involved. Why do all the sea turtles have to be royal? Is this a medieval fantasy novel? Serena's face went blank again, but this time it wasn't in surprise or amazement. It was the face she made when she suddenly got an idea. She quickly reached into her bag she had wrapped around her shoulder and began to dig through it. To which Layla tilted her head in confusion. What are you doing? But Serena knew that if she talked now, she'd forget all about her idea. So she focused first on fetching her writing notebook and pen out of her bag and pulled it out. She jotted down all the words that she was thinking, which, surprisingly, she found enough to fill a full page. When she felt that she got her idea down as adequately as she possibly could, she looked up at Layla and gave her the biggest grin that Layla had ever seen. You just gave me my inspiration for my book. Really? Sea turtles with titles? That's what you're waiting to write about? Maybe. You don't know what it is about, really. Well, you won't until you read it. Ah, I see. Trying to convince me to be your first buyer. Very clever tactic. Serena just grinned, to which Layla responded with a grin of her own. Serena stuffed her notebook and pen back into her bag, and she stepped into place beside the other. The pair finished the rest of the tour with grins on their faces, their hearts so much lighter than they had been in such a long time. Possibly their whole lives. So, I guess this is where we part ways. For now. Yeah. Serena stared at Layla for a moment, then cast her eyes down to the sidewalk just outside the convenience store where they had met a few hours before. They were standing about a step apart, and just far enough to where she could reach out and touch the other. But Serena found that she was shaking far too much for that. She locked her hands behind her back, shifted her weight from one leg to the other nervously. Are you okay? Yeah, of course. I just, well... With a tilt to her chin, Layla tried to find and meet Serena's gaze again. But the other was shifting so much she couldn't quite find it. She wondered if all of her future conversations with Serena were going to be like this. Not that she really minded the other being shy. So Layla just sighed and gave another... So Layla sighed and gave the other the sweetest smile and voice that she could muster. Whatever it is, I won't be mad, okay? And I could never hate you. Or think anything less of you. So, please tell me. Something about the other, her confidence, her bravery, her faith in someone she often hated herself, made Serena want to open herself up. More and more each moment that she spent with Layla. But Serena's personality of always holding herself back, and fear that someone will hate her, still made her have second thoughts. Perhaps the more time she spent with the Fox girl, the easier it would be to open up. Or perhaps it would just always be difficult, but she would be able to manage at least if it was her. I bought you something at the shop. The bunny girl pulled her linked hands out from behind her back and held out a small paper bag designed with aquafish and bubbles on it that fit perfectly into the center of her palm. Layla's eyes went wide as she cautiously held out a hand to take it. For me? Well, for both of us, actually. I just really wanted to thank you for the book idea, and this trip too. I had a lot of fun, and... Serena buried her head again, unable to face the other with a flood of blushes forming all over her face. She felt Layla's fingers tickle her palm as the other cautiously picked it up. She heard the crunch of the paper as Layla peeled back the tape, and the clang of metal as two pieces fell into her palm. After a few moments of silence, Serena found that she just couldn't take it. She looked up over the present now resting in Layla's palm. 2 metal turtle hair clips, 1 bronze and 1 silver. They're hair clips. See? Bronze for you and silver for me, and we could wear them together. I just figured you might get mad at me if I bought something for you and not for myself. 'Cause I don't have a lot of money. So I bought a matching gift and... Serena. When the other looked up at Layla's face again, she found that tears had begun to fall from them. For a moment, Serena's body went numb, terrified that she had done something wrong. She wanted to reach out, to explain to the other what she had meant. But before she could say anything, Layla cut off her pleas by wrapping her free arm around Serena's shoulders and burying her face in the crook of the bunny girl's neck. Serena could feel Layla's warm tears on her skin, her warm breath, her soft lips as she began to speak against her pale skin. Thank you, Serena. You're welcome. Never having had a friend before, Serena didn't quite know what to do. She stood there awkwardly for a few moments, but then she gently raised a hand and placed it softly on Layla's back. If this is what the other wanted, what the other needed, then Serena was happy to oblige. After all, the bunny had meant to give the fox the gift for the precise reason of thanking her for this trip. A hug was just an extra bonus? A tip?